Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again in the Wasteland on Misery Point Radio. Today, I am very pleased to share with you a very special guest who has been with me since practically the beginning, going all the way back to the On the Edge days, RIP On the Edge. But joining me once again, Ms. Linda Nicole Blair. Linda, thank you so much for coming back on the show. Always love having you, and it's been way too long since we've last done this.
Absolutely, too long. Thanks to COVID.
Thanks to COVID and thanks to life just going off
Ah,
in all kinds of
yeah.
crazy different directions. And I mean, besides COVID, I mean, there's just been a lot of stuff that's gone on in the world since the last time we talked.
Mm,
And something that we had wanted to talk about, and we kind of touched on it the last time you were on. Back when I think No Limits came out, was your book was about to come out, and now you wrote a book, it got published, it's out there in the world. And tell me a little bit about that so we make sure that we get that covered.
okay, well, it's called Poetics of American Poetry and Americana Music, and then there's a colon, and then A Woman's Truth. And so this has kind of been like boiling around in my head for a while because women and music, it's a huge topic. I
Yeah.
mean, women are not represented equally in the music industry at all, and that's a huge thing for me because I sort of see myself. I'm a musician and a singer songwriter, but I also want to use whatever tiny little influence that I have in my corner of the world to advocate for women. I mean, it's a huge thing. And so it kind of started that way. And then I'm a literature professor. And so I wanted to also sort of tie it in with American literature. So I take three American writers, and then I tie them to modern day Americana musicians. So there's Anne Bradstreet and Phyllis Wheatley, and then Emily Dickinson are the three poets, and then I tie them to uh, Brandy Carlisle with Anne Bradstreet, and Rhiannon Giddens with Phyllis Wheatley, and Lucinda Williams with Emily Dickinson. And so, sort of, the theme is that these women, the poets, had a greater influence just than poetry. They influence culture as a whole, and that includes music. And
Yeah.
so, sort of, the power of a woman's voice and women speaking truth to power and all of that. So,
Yeah. And, when we first talked, I remember you talking about that. And I was like, that's just, how do you tie all those things together? And I was like, what is this book going to look like? And how is its format going to be? And if I remember when I finally saw it, this thing is rather large, a very voluminous, if that's an actual word. So, was that how you envisioned it as you were kind of concepting this whole thing out? Was it supposed to look kind of like a true literary book, or was it
oh,
more?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I wanted it to be, it's an academic book, but I also wanted it to be appeal to a broader audience because I wanted like people who love music, people who love women's music, you know, music by women. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted it to sort of cross over from the strict academic to the more popular culture too, sort of to tie those together.
Yeah. And you
So.
were developing this for quite some time. It had been kind of bouncing around in your noggin. So from concept to actual publication was several years.
It was probably 3 years, maybe four, because I went to Americana Fest in 2019 and I did interviews, which I included in the book.
Mm.
So there's some rising stars in there now, like Michaela Neller. I shout out to Michaela if she ever hears this. And then there's, my local people that I interviewed, Tammy Frost being one of them. Um, yeah, I mean, I just kind of wanted to give kudos to all the incredible women that I've met, and then sort of to use them as a way of saying, this is not just famous women. We're not talking about people who are just on, you know, the big screen and stuff. We're talking about people who work at it every single day. They're in the trenches every day. They're out doing gigs 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
in their communities, and they're singer-songwriters, and they're hardworking, and they deserve to be elevated. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And when it was getting down to almost time to hit the presses and this thing was printing, how were you feeling at that point? Was there fear? Was there nervousness? Was there trepidation, excitement? Like what was going through your head before you actually saw the final product, but you knew it was coming?
I was so excited. I couldn't wait. I could not wait to see it. Because it's that feeling. Well, you know how it is. You work so hard on something, and you work, and then you see it come to fruition, and you're just like, yeah. And I hope that people enjoy it. I did get a big thumbs up from the Library Association of America. If you go to if you go to the Roman Littlefield site and look it up, you'll see a review from the librarians who really liked it. So I'm like, yes, the librarians liked it and gave me a good recommendation. So I was excited about that.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. And so when it finally came out and you held it in your hand, physically, what was going through your mind? How did that make you feel? That you created this thing, besides the music which you've already created, but now you've got this piece of literature that is out there in the universe.
It feels pretty good. It feels pretty good. Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, all that hard work pays off.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's what I
definitely.
try to. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say definitely. I could tell you are somebody who puts a lot into the things that you do. I remember talking to you about how in depth you dove on this. So there's
Mhm.
no doubt in my mind that you every little detail that could have possibly been covered, you dug into it.
Oh, I tried. I really tried. And I mean, in my next project, I want to. I want to kind of do something similar. I want to write songs. Like I've got 5 songs about women in American literature. Like, they're from the character's point of view. And so I want to do like 5 more. But then I want to do a book of essays written by other people, like other scholars, let them do all the hard scholarly work, and then I want to write the songs to go along with the book. Is that terrible of me? That's terrible. But
No.
like I would write the intro or the conclusion, and then I would sort of farm it out. And what I want to try to do is get an NEH grant so that everybody gets paid.
Yeah.
So they'll get paid for their writing.
That'd be awesome. It's
Yeah,
like a literary musical anthology of
yeah,
awesomeness.
yeah. And all like American characters and songs about these American characters. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing. So that came out a while back, so it's out there in the world, and of course we'll publish links to tell people how to find that a little bit
Oh,
later on.
so
Yeah.
nice. Thanks.
Now, before we dig into the awesomeness of your latest album, I do want to talk to you about the epic trip that you just went
Oh
on
my
because
gosh.
I number one, vacations are amazing, not just because they're fun, but with all of the stuff that's been happening in the world over the last couple of years. I think everybody just kind of need to decompress and refocus and re-energize and just kind of get away for a new perspective. So
Mm.
tell us about this big journey you went on because you went to several different places.
Yeah, well, the whole thing started because I got a paper that I wrote got accepted to a conference in Paris. And so the name of the group is the New Directions in the Humanities. And so I wrote a paper about Virginia Woolf, who was always kind of my go-to
Right.
because yeah, I mean, that's my whole dissertation and everything. Anyway, but I wrote that paper, got accepted, and then we sort of built the vacation on the front end of that. And so the paper thing was at the very end of it. So the first thing we did was we went to Germany. And Mike, my husband, has friends in different little cities from Berlin all the way to like Cologne, Germany. So we started off in Berlin and we went to 2 other small towns, and then we ended up in Cologne, and we took a train from Cologne to Paris.
Yeah.
So,
And if I remember seeing something on one of your posts, did you get to play
oh
an
yeah,
open mic at an Irish pub in
yes,
Paris? Did I read that
yes,
correctly?
yes. I know this is crazy. So I asked Mike. I was like, "Why don't we see if we can find an open mic in Paris?" And he's like, and I, 'cause I didn't have a guitar, and I didn't know, if anybody would be willing to lend me their guitar. And so I found this place, and sure enough, they had it was while we were there. I think it was on a Wednesday night. And so, yeah, we went, and they were really nice. And the guy gave me his guitar. He let me play, and you had your usual crowd of people that never listen to anybody. They're just there to drink and talk.
Right.
And then you have the people who were actually listening. And so it's the same in America.
You know
It's everywhere.
what? This is going to make me sound like a horrible, horrible person. And yes, I probably am. But so here's my first thought was I was like, okay, open mic in Paris. I'm picturing this beatnik in a striped shirt with a beret and a really long cigarette going, okay, up next. And then I was like, I know that's not how it went, but I was just hoping that there would be some element of that out there in the
Well,
world still.
there was kind of that, there was a little bit of that vibe, but it was mostly, most of the audience were people in their mid 20s to their mid 30s. It was really a youngish crowd. There were a couple of other American people there
Yeah.
who were sort of closer to our age, to mine and my husband's age, but most of the people there were kind of in that demographic. And after I sang, and I had a hard time with this guy's guitar for some reason. It's like it was felt weird. It was like I don't know, I don't know how to explain it. It just didn't feel. It wasn't my Martin, and
Yeah.
I couldn't get my hands around it. So anyway, but after I got through, one person, this youngish person, came up to me and was like, "Oh, that was really good." And so now we're friends on Facebook.
Oh, cool.
I know.
That's awesome. You know, I talk to musicians every day all over the world, and I think I have yet to really encounter anybody who's had stories to share about playing songs or in bands in France. So, cool. You're the first I've talked to about playing in Paris.
It was okay, and I had a really good time, and the beer was good, and and we got a snack to eat. It was really good food, and I don't have any complaints. And it was right, like the Seine River was like right outside the door. So I mean,
Oh,
how can you not like that?
but it was an Irish pub.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the Galway Irish pub. I know. It was bizarre.
That's crazy. So, Germany and then France, and you hit a couple other places too, didn't you?
Oh yeah, well we had to fly in and out of Iceland.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we were in the Iceland airport. So
Which I assume was in Reykjavik because that's really the only place to
right,
go, right?
yes, it was right outside of Reykjavik. It's sort of this little bitty. It's like the airport town,
Yeah.
sort of like SeaTac.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like SeaTac, and then if you have time, you go to the city. If you don't, then you stay in the airport. So we had to stay in the airport,
Yeah.
but
And
it was
then
cool.
then you had to come back, and now you're back to reality. But just a few months back then, you finally released another album with any luck.
Hmm.
So I think that was back in February or so it got released. So now I know that you, of course, work with our mutual friend, Mr. Bradley Miranda,
Yes.
who was just on the show just last month or maybe the month before. We actually talked about how he was working on your album with you, and you worked with Kyle Miller again.
I
So
did.
yeah, so two dear friends of mine whom I love tremendously. So tell us about With Any Luck. Give me the story on how this album kind of
Oh,
came into existence.
well, I think I started writing it during COVID,
Hmm.
right? And so like there's one, you know, there was like this this feeling that I have, like I'm getting old, and time is running out.
Very
It's like
positive,
it was like the COVID depression or something, and
right?
I was feeling so isolated. So anyway, I wrote this one song called "No One Tells You." It's no one tells you what it's like to grow old. You just have to go for it, forget the past. So it's not depressing. It's kind of an uplifting song. Um, and then I don't know. There were some songs that I wrote that just kind of they had been sticking around in my head. Like I was trying to write this song about Montana for
Hmm.
some reason. Mike and I had visited Montana, and I loved the little town, and I loved the scenery. And I was trying to think, well, how what am I gonna? So that song has been sort of you know bumping around in my head for like 2 or 3 years, and then I finally figured it out. It was like in about 6 weeks, I figured that song out. It had taken years. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I guess that's just the process.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned those two particular songs because so I downloaded the album when you
Oh,
first released it,
oh, good.
and yay! So I've listened to it several times at this point, and those
Oh,
two particular songs, I find them to actually be standouts on the album. They each, of course, they don't sound the same. Like they're two kind of different styles of music, if you will. Um, but they really, I think, kind of showcased a very storytelling way. You have a very narrative fashion, like when you
I do.
sing, like, and your voice is kind of in the same sense of like Sheryl Crow or Chrissy Hind, where
Oh my
they
God.
really you feel like they're talking to you, like they're having a
Oh,
conversation. So when I listen to your songs, that is kind of the vibe that I get off there. And Montana specifically, it was just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I am there. So probably because of your literary roots and maybe your background, but I do find that your songs tell stories, and I
mhm.
feel like they kind of guide you through. So those two particular songs, I really did find them to be standouts on the album. And I
Oh,
don't know if you feel the same about those two, but you mentioned those two specifically, and
nice.
I've got those written down right here. So I just felt that kind of coincidental.
Oh, that's really nice. Well, the other song that I wrote, the other thing I wanted to talk about is Queen of the County.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that one last summer um, at blues camp. So I went to Port Townsend Blues Camp and I sort of wrote that one while I was at camp. I know, it's weird. And so it's just I was thinking about this people that I interviewed in this book. It's kind of weird. But that song is also a story. That's what I was trying to think of. It's a country song. It's very, like I was going for sort of that basic country vibe,
Yeah.
like three chords and the truth. And that's kind of and so there's a line in there that, that she's speaking truth and she's wearing those red cowboy boots, and it's like, "Rah, I'm just going to speak the truth." And I like that. That's one of my other favorites on the album.
Yeah, I think that this particular album, when I go back and I listen to, how you and I first got introduced, and I think that was back in, was it 2017? Has it been that long already? You
Yes.
were,
Yeah.
God damn.
We were at the trench,
We were at the
remember?
trench, yeah,
Yeah.
and I was working with Brad and helping him record some sessions while he was schooling me, if you will. But so I had the opportunity to hear, some early kind of takes on some of your music, and then Little Queenie came out, and then you had another album come out, the No Limits, I think it was called,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, and
Mhm.
now I'm hearing this one, and there's such a huge progression, not only I think in your sound, but just overall, like the number of elements that are involved in each of these songs. So this album, there's a lot of layers. There are a lot of textures. There is just so much
Oh,
happening on
that's so
this, and
nice to
yeah,
say.
I don't know if you really if you go back and listen to the progressions, a lot of artists don't like to do that, but as somebody that I really enjoy people's musical journeys. So this is a very southern feeling album, and I
Uh-huh.
and more so than the other ones, I think. And while there's still rock elements to it, I think this one definitely, as you said, takes a pretty straight ahead country path.
It does. It does. And I don't even know where that comes from. And I guess it does come from my roots somewhere, growing up in the South. And I didn't particularly listen to a lot of country music when I was growing up, but I guess it's just, um, I don't know. It's hard to explain. That's a really good observation. And I think, just the kinds of music that I listen to also just has a huge influence on that. Just I like story songs. Like I'm a huge Swiftie fan. I love Taylor Swift. I am a huge Swiftie. And the thing I like about her the most is her lyrics are just killer.
Yeah,
She has killer lyrics and you just can't her stories are just, you know,
yeah,
there's some of them are just profound. Anyway,
yeah.
as
Well,
that's this.
it makes perfect sense, and I pick up on that because when I was writing music, I am drawn to those elements. So and I'm a writer, so I really pay attention to things that people say or people feel, and I definitely can pick up on elements that come from, say, a personal experience or a
Yeah.
personal background versus, somebody who just writes cool stuff, but you don't feel like they're necessarily a part of that actual story. So I am drawn to storytellers, and I love concept albums and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so your storytelling and your uh, imagery does come through in your songs, which
I
which
hope
I
so.
find to be awesome. Yeah. Now that you have been recording, so you're fairly prolific as a songwriter. You got a lot of material out there. So are you approaching these songs differently now? Like when you go to write, are you thinking, oh, I'm going to write this, but now I'm going to have this fiddle part come in and I'm going to have some harmonica here? Whereas originally, I think that stuff kind of came after you wrote the songs.
Yeah, I am. I guess I am thinking more along those lines. And I do want to shout out to Kevin Day and Brenna Wheeler. Brenna was the fiddle player on that album.
Mm,
And Brenna, if you look her up, they have reels on Instagram. Brenna is amazing. And I just feel so lucky that she was on that album. And then Kevin Day played lead. So him and Kyle and Bradley I mean, they just made such a great trio. Everything just worked,
yeah.
right?
Did you guide any of that direction on how those other instruments would play, or did you just kind of hand in the framework and say, this is kind of what I'm thinking, but just work your own magic on it?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, I think at some point, and you would agree with this, I know, because you're also a musician, and you have to think about how uh, you've got to trust them to know what
Mm,
they're doing.
yeah.
But then I also did have some input. I think Bradley I think he likes that. He likes for people to have their input. Um, but at the end of the day, it was like, you guys, y'all are the experts here. You're the ones that really know how all of this should come together. But yeah, yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah, the fiddle work specifically on this album is pretty next level. I mean, it's it's
It's amazing.
yeah, I have always wanted to kind of okay, my metal friends are going to give me shit about this, but I love violins and fiddles, and I love the classical elements too. So I always wanted to learn, but there is almost no worse instrument to listen to somebody learn how to play
Right.
than a violin, because it does sound like you're murdering cats. And I remember a guy that I was in a band with back in the day was learning, and I was like, oh my God, you got to go through that to get to this. I'm like, if you're a bad guitar player, I mean, that's fine. You can, unplug it or whatever, but, a
Uh,
violin is there.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that and the drums, that'd be two really, really, really hard instruments for your neighbors to listen to you learn for sure.
yeah,
But
right?
I feel like when I hear something that is really well done, it really perks my ears up. And so probably one of my favorite elements on that is definitely the fiddle work. And there's quite a bit of lead guitar work on these songs too, which is not necessarily as present in your previous works. I mean, there's been a little bits and pieces here, but there's a lot of guitar soloing happening on this one.
I loved his work on Her Kind.
Yeah.
That's based on a poem by Anne Sexton, by the way. Thank you, Anne Sexton, if I know you're listening. She is in heaven now. But anyway, yeah. So that's an example of like something I would want to put in my new book if I ever do one. Anyway, but yeah, Her Kind. Really all of them. The other one, Heaven Help Us, has that sort of '60s vibe going on.
Yeah, with the little
Yeah, I
Leslie kind
love.
of rotary speaker
Yeah,
vibe and
I
stuff.
love that. I love that song.
Very, very, very cool.
Yeah.
So your Bandcamp description on this album states, as we kind of touched on already, that these songs were written from 2019 to 2022 and was inspired by people you met during that time frame, as well as people from your past.
Mhm.
So, are there any cool stories regarding how any of those songs came together?
Hmm. So I don't have it in front of me, so I know Better Woman. Oh, okay, Better Woman. I'll talk about Better Woman. And let's see, to 1989, long time ago. I had just gotten my PhD, and so my parents and I went to Nashville. And my dad was like, "Well, we're going to go to the Grand Ole Opry." I was like, "Oh my God, I hate country music, Daddy. Really? Do we really have to do that?" And he was like, oh yes, we're going to go." And there, it's on TV. And I was like, "Oh my God." And so we went in, and it was in the original place, right? In the church. And so we walked in, and we were sitting on the very front row, and they were taping in the afternoon. And so we're sitting in the front row, and I was like, "Oh my God, I hate this. I hate country music." So Clint Black comes out, and I'm like, "Who is that?" Really?
Ooh, ears perk up.
Who? My gosh, Clint Black. So he started playing, and he played Better Man. And I don't know if you've ever heard this song, but if you haven't, go back and listen to it. And I loved that song. And I was like, "Oh my God, I love country music now. I love that song. He's so good looking and he sings so good. Oh my God, that's country music." Ah. So that kind of was a corner turner for me.
As your ground zero.
And yeah. And so I've always wanted to write a response to Better Man. And so, because in the song, he's all, "Oh, I have to leave. I'll be a better man." And so I was like, And then so I decided to write Better Woman as, "Hey, you left, come back, because I can be a better woman too." That kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So, I love that song. And then just thinking about where it came from.
Yeah.
And all those years ago,
And you open with that one, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a boom. It hits you right off the bat. And also, a lot of your songs, I mean, you just go to a song and boom, you're right in the verse, right? You're just right into it all. And it's so in your face. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fun. And then the other one, there was one, oh God, what was the one about, can you read, can you read through the track list? Because I can't remember
Oh,
the one song.
I don't have the
Oh
track list in
gosh,
front of me. Yeah.
there's a song about, that I base, Grace and Mercy. Grace and Mercy I wrote for my brother.
Mm.
Because he died in 2000. He just fell and hit his head, and he died, and it was terrible. But he loved his motorcycle, and he loved to ride his motorcycle. And he was not married. He never got married. He was just kind of a free spirit. And so I wrote that for him because it's sort of that, hey, I'm I'm past the great divide now, and I'm living on grace and mercy, man. Just whatever happens.
Yeah.
So I wrote that for him.
Oh, that's awesome. So, your songs, they do have a lot of personal touches in them. And you and I talked about this, way back in the day, that you definitely take a lot of personal experiences or your history, your childhood, your family. And when you're writing these songs, some artists take that as like, I really want to share this, and other artists take this as like, I'm opening myself up to vulnerability here, and I don't know if I should really be doing this. How do you feel when you're writing personal songs?
Well, I try to, a lot of my songs are, like they may be based on a personal experience, but I don't think I get personal.
Yeah.
In the songs. I think there's a big difference.
Still a little bit of a separation then between you and the final content.
Yeah. Because what it's like, you do a lot of writing, and I know that you probably you put a lot of yourself into it, but the final version isn't just all. It's not like, wow, it's all out there. It's because it's structured. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and all that. And so I think about. And then writing poetry, which is close to writing song lyrics, you can't put everything in. You have to be picky,
Yeah. And for you, I assume that the recording, the music, and all that stuff, it's a personal project. It's a passion project. It's also not a cheap project to keep doing. So is this kind of like your emotional fulcrum? Is this kind of what keeps you balanced from your one person life to your other person life? Is that why you keep doing it?
I can't help myself.
Yeah.
It's
an addiction.
I just love it. I've been playing music since I was a little girl, since I was 5 years old, and probably before that. I love music. And I was thinking about this the other day, actually. When I was growing up, I dreamed of being a writer, being a musician, and I would I would listen to albums like even the Rolling Stones, and I would listen to all that in my room, and I would play the tambourine and sing, and I was always writing, and I just this is just who I am. This is who I am. It's who I've always been.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we love who you are, so obviously, keep doing it. And you're doing a lot of these recordings now, though, in a more comfortable environment out of your
Uh,
home, right? And you're having like Brad and the others. Are they coming
right,
to you to kind of
right,
take part in this?
right. And
So
then yeah.
that makes a huge difference, just even on how you can, take more time to breathe with the process, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do miss Monkey Trench though.
It's a great studio.
If Mike Herrera is listening, he's an awesome person. But Mike, if you ever have an opening for your studio, I loved working at Monkey Trench. That's a great experience.
It's a great place for sure. I loved hanging out there, but there is something to be said for having the familiar
Yeah,
surroundings that kind of give you that inner peace and make it a little bit more comfortable just to kind of get through the process. So, and
that's true.
as we kind of talked about just before we actually hopped on the air, so you're recording this stuff yourself with, of course, the help of our friends, but you've also created your own label, so you're self-releasing everything.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I don't have an agent. I don't have anything, just me. And and then feel really, really, really blessed to have Bradley and to have started working with Bradley all those years ago. And the fact that he still wants to work with me is pretty amazing. So I'm really grateful for that. And then all the people that I've met, like you and Kevin and Jack. I mean, all these, Kyle, all these incredible people I never would have met otherwise. Just it's amazing.
Yeah, it's super cool, and to think that that whole, I guess, cataclysmic event of bringing us all together and the big boom, being born out of a studio that is known for producing music for one of the biggest punk bands in the world, right?
Wow. And
It,
how lucky do we feel, right, to even
yeah,
be a part of any of that?
super super crazy. But at the end of the day, as I have learned, and as you have as well, people are people, and some might find themselves on different tiers of whatever corporate success definitions there may be. But at the end of the day, musicians, artists, writers, entertainers, sculptors, painters, you name it, everybody just does their craft. And
That's right.
sometimes the audience is just what makes the big difference, but we're all doing kind of the same stuff. So i
Yeah.
I of course love to support the artistic communities regardless of their genres or their medium. I find artists to be the most fascinating tortured souls on the planet because I think there's a little bit of that tortured soul in all of us. So
Definitely.
now that this album is out, I'm gonna assume that you've already got probably at least a dozen other songs or frameworks of songs bouncing around in your head.
Yeah, I do. But and that's the thing. I think that it never stops.
Mm-mm.
That that voice or that creativity, whatever it is, that I'm always it never ever stops.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, so am I going to write that one down or am I going to let that one go? Just and sometimes if I let it go, it never comes back, and I'm
Mm.
really mad at myself. But so I try to write down, like if I think of a good line or I think of a good, like something comes into my head, I try to write it down really quick so I don't forget it and then I can go back. But I've met a lot of people, a lot of songwriters are like that. They probably have notebooks and notebooks of just stuff
Yeah.
because you just don't know.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned that because I actually have written down on my fancy little notebook. Do you ever find yourself in a social situation and an idea for a song or a line pops in your head and you go, "Just give me a minute, guys. I got to write this down. This is great stuff right here."
That has happened. Yeah.
And they look at
Yeah.
you like you're on crack, like, "What is this crazy person doing?" You're like, "Hey, just give me a second."
Well, no kidding. I keep a little notebook. This little notebook
Oh, the little
right
black
here,
book.
my little black book in my bag all all the time. I never leave home without it because you just don't know.
I have a good friend of mine who's in a band over in Florida, and he says that what he does, and he's a guitar player, but he has a little portable recorder. And he goes, I'll get an idea for a song, and I'll turn the record button, and I'll just go chunk 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 chunk. And he goes, and then I'll go home and I'll like try to transcribe that into what I was thinking in my head. But he's like, it doesn't. He goes, people think I'm crazy because I'll be out in the middle of the street with my recorder, like vocalizing guitar parts into a tape machine. He goes, but it works for me, and that's how I do. He goes, because I have terrible handwriting, and if I write anything down, I'll never be able to read it again, especially if I'm in a situation where I'm trying to write in a hurry. And I'm like, that's a damn good idea, dude.
Oh, such a good idea. Well, sometimes I do record stuff on my iPhone.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when I go walking sometimes, if there's nobody around, if something comes in my head, I'm like, oh my God, turn that on. Here's like a line from a song. Like I'll sing it and then I'll.
Yeah. So my mechanism is that I talk to myself a lot, and Marcia is my wife. Marcia, she's always like, everything all right? And I'm like, I'm good. I'm thinking this thing through in my head, and sometimes people are watching me and I'm not even aware of it, but that's pretty funny. I think all of us in the artistic mediums have our own way of kind of getting those thoughts from here in the back of our head to the forefront to get them, out of our mouths or out of our hands or whatever. So,
oh yeah.
I love watching the process of different people kind of getting those ideas from conception to final print, if you will.
I mean, it's such a weird thing that happens. It's, I like to think about it like there's a string that goes from the top of my head into whatever the ionosphere, and then like I want to pull the ideas down into my consciousness. That sounds really weird, doesn't it?
It sounds like you're taking some ayahuasca or something. Not that I would judge you for that.
It's just a strange process, and I'm not scientific about it at all. I don't understand it. I just go with it.
Yeah. Awesome. Says the literary academic expert.
Yeah.
So now you've covered a lot of ground with all of your writing with your book and then with your different albums and encompassing different styles. What are some of these other projects then that you might want to try? Have you thought about taking any different musical direction? Have you thought about something that you haven't worked with that you really want to try a different style or incorporating different styles?
I don't know. I always want to write a blues song, but then I always think, well, do I really feel qualified to write a blues song? I don't really.
Sure.
I mean, I feel more at home with the country music or singer-songwriter type of stuff.
Sure.
I do love rock music. I
Yeah.
want to write more rock songs. Like kind of in the style of Sheryl Crow, that kind of rock music.
Yeah.
Not Janis Joplin. No. But yeah, I just the next thing I want to do is like a combination of literature and music, even more so than the other book. I kind of spinning off of that book. I want to write songs from the perspective of women in American literature, like telling their stories.
Sure.
And then I want to ask some literary experts, like people that are teaching, professor types, to write essays about those characters with all the research and everything. And then I want to put the DVD or the CD with the book.
Yeah.
That's the next thing I want to do.
So it's a true multimedia experience. It's funny you mentioned that. I remember trying to, like, when I was a kid and I wanted to learn, like, guitar, learn something, you would get the book and then you would get the sound portion with it, It's kind of like and then I had a friend of mine who actually I'm a part of their network, the Spoilerverse network, and a lot of them are comic book writers and authors and illustrators, and he released a book that was kind of a horror themed graphic novel that spans generations.
Wow.
And then he enlisted a bunch of musicians, and he'd reached out to me and he's like, hey, I want to have each story have its own soundtrack so people could read their stories and
Oh,
hear some music in the
yes.
background. So he did that, and it was super cool. And so what you just described to me, it just kind of jogged my mind about that. But the combining of elements, I think, creates just a fascinating fullness to content that you wouldn't otherwise get. So I absolutely love those ideas.
Yeah, there's a book speaking of kind of gothic stuff. There's a book called The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, who unfortunately died. The guy was a genius. But so The Shadow of the Wind has its own soundtrack.
Oh,
So it was never published together, but what he managed to do is put it on a website. So when you're reading the book, you can like chapter one, and then you like hit the soundtrack. It's just like
that's
it's
awesome.
kind of that same idea. I love that.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
So, are you hitting the show circuit again? Are you out playing live?
I'm trying to. I'm trying to. It's really hard to get gigs. I mean, I don't have a manager. I don't have anybody to get, you know. And then I'm really busy, with other got the academic stuff
Yeah,
going on,
with
and so
life.
and I was just really hard. But I'm working on it. I've got a gig coming up at Grumble and Wine in Bremerton on August 10th,
Okay.
and then I'm working on trying to get something at a place in Paulsbo. So it's just it's really hard.
Yeah. Well, the getting shows booked, pre-COVID was hard enough, and during COVID, a lot of places just stopped doing it, and then after things started opening back up, I did find that a lot of the venues just were not doing the music anymore, and
Yeah,
so it did kind of slim it down a little bit.
yeah. I mean, I was starting to kind of get on a roll, and then COVID just
Yeah.
like kibosh. And then last year, I went up for promotion at my job, which I got.
Woohoo!
So I'm a full teaching professor now. But
Nice.
anyway, that took up all of my time. Like the year before that, I was writing all the narrative and getting all that stuff ready. And then last year was just sort of, getting all that stuff together and waiting for the outcome. And yeah, so it's just been kind of a weird couple of years.
Sure. So then on the immediate horizon, what's next for you? Are you going to focus on just writing new material? Are you going to focus on trying to find those places to play, or what's the priority for you right now?
Musically,
Yes.
okay. Oh, musically, I want to start writing a new album.
Of course you do.
It's time is a wasted, man. I ain't getting no younger. So I want to write a new album, and the book thing that I want to do is that's extra. So there's really two things
Sure. Yeah.
going on. I need a lot of prayer.
I'm sure that you'll have plenty of prayers thrown your way, no doubt about it. I mean, your work that you do is not just something that you just throw it out there and release it. I mean, yours requires thought and dedication and careful considerations, both literary and musically, of course. So I think that there's no need to rush anything, but you've got enough music out there that we can all listen to and enjoy. And
Oh,
of course, anytime you get a chance to play out here locally, I know Marsh and I would love to get out and see you play again. It's
that'd
been a
be
long
great.
time. So, yeah. So, where is the best place then if people want to check out your newest album? Where can they find you? Bandcamp, of course.
Can I just say one more thing
Yeah.
before? I just want to say, in all seriousness, how grateful I am
Oh,
to you and Bradley and Kevin and Kyle and Brenna and so many people. I just don't have time to thank everybody, just for all the help that I've gotten over the past how many years I've been trying to do this. I'm just so grateful
oh.
and excited by it. And all those people uh, continue to inspire me. You all inspire me.
Well, I would say likewise because we are also inspired by the artists, so we're inspired by you equally, and I think that supporting each other, no matter what your profession is or your artistic endeavors are, your medium or your creativity or otherwise. I mean, we're all kind of in the same game, playing the same clubs, doing the same stuff, and we want to see each other succeed. And it's even more so when you've got a tie with somebody. That bond is just a little bit deeper. So so likewise, we're all truly honored and blessed to be friends with you and work with you,
Oh,
and so it's just great. We all love you and want you to succeed, and just be comfortable and happy with what you're doing. At the end of the day, you should just love what you're doing, and
oh yeah.
that's enough, right?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you want to find my music, basically I tell people to go to Bandcamp.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to have another website, but I haven't paid attention to it, and I don't even know what it's doing anymore. It might have just turned over and died. But I don't have that anymore. But I do have a Facebook music page, my Payton Street Music, and it's public, so anybody can join. They don't have to be invited. Just be nice. be be a good music person and be a
Yeah.
nice person. But yeah, and then I have a Reverb Nation page
Okay.
too. So I'm on Reverb Nation, but that's it.
And so just go to that search engine, type in Linda Nicole Blair, and it'll pull up your discography and other
I
cool
think
stuff that
so.
you got going up.
I
Yeah,
think so.
it
Yeah.
works. I've done it. Trust me, folks. It's
Oh, and
there.
I'm on SoundCloud too.
Oh, okay, awesome. So,
Forgot
well,
about that.
there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My good friend Linda Nicole Blair hanging out with me once again on Misery Point Radio. Thank you, LNB. Always awesome to have you on, and we won't wait so long till we do it again the next time.
Thank you, Mike.